but they were just too strong. They'd stick it in your face and let you smell what they consider wrong. That's why I say, hey man, nice shot. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, episode 61. What do you think?
61 episodes, 39 to go to the Roger Maris number right now, and 39 to go, and we will be at 100. Amazing feat. Of course, I have no idea who that music was. Doesn't matter.
Filter. Yes.
You could have given me 5 million guesses, and I would have never guessed that.
Well, that's
my job. Unless we were playing match game. You said coffee blank. I could have figured it out then.
Well, we maybe should try that someday. And see.
Might work.
Yeah, you never know. But that's why I'm here, to help you to get caught up in the worlds of technology and music.
You caught up 40 years late or something like that on some of these?
Yeah. Well, it's all right. That one's not, I guess, 40 years ago. So that one, I think, was... I can't remember when that was. Late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. So, yeah. Anyways, here we are. The lyrics will transition nicely into what we're going to talk about first today in our Local Lowdown segment. We've got candidate for Minnesota Governor Phillip Parrish coming up today. We're going to do an interview with him. I'm super excited about it.
Big show. They only get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Absolutely. We have had all of the governor candidates on now, except for, I guess, Keith Downey, who has just dropped out, and Tim Pawlenty, who has just jumped in. So we'll see if maybe Tim Pawlenty is in our future, or maybe we go back and we talk again with Jeff or Mary.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. We're going to have a primary.
Yeah.
So the endorsement is useless. So we'll have the convention. It really doesn't matter who wins. Unless people are going to drop out because of it. So we'll know pretty soon. I mean, the convention up in Duluth is not that far away. So
right. And, I'm really interested. I know, we've talked to Jeff and Mary already, but I would like their take on a lot of this preemption battle stuff, and we're going to get into that with our first subject as well. It's kind of a new term, and so you're hearing us use it. If you follow us on Twitter, you've probably seen us tweet about it, where local governments are trying to make it so that the laws that are passed at the state level don't apply at the local level if you decide to do differently. Now, that could take the place of minimum wage, minimum age of tobacco, gun regulation.
It could take the place of whatever they want.
Right.
Pretty much.
Right.
Pretty much if they don't like the law at the state, they can basically just nullify it.
That's exactly what it is. Now, I'm going to say there are some terrible laws at the state level that really hamper cities, and they need to have a vehicle to fight back against those things. But when you're talking about things like gun regulation, which is what we're going to get into here first, I mean, they really don't have a leg to stand on, because that's the Second Amendment of our Constitution. Well, they don't regulate that at the city level.
Jay, I've said before, I've always said that the worst taught and understood subject in this country is economics. The average person couldn't tell you how supply and demand works, couldn't tell you what's macro or microeconomics, couldn't explain unemployment and how the government calculates that. Stuff I could teach to a first grader. Your average adult in this country doesn't know. And I don't say that to be super condescending. I know it sounds like that, but if we can't understand how a capitalist economy is supposed to work, that we can't understand American tradition, American values, and what built this country. But I've come to believe that maybe civics and our nation's founding is the least understood thing. Because when I hear people comment on the Second Amendment, I have never heard such ignorant things said. Let me explain something. The Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting. It has nothing to do with having a handgun. It is about citizens taking up arms against a tyrannical government.
Exactly. And it's because of the history of the world as we look at it. I mean, look at guys like Genghis Khan who went across the countryside raping and pillaging, and he wasn't the only one. The Romans did it. As long as there have been kings. I mean, you look at England and the whole prima nocta deal where, a lord got to have his way with a newlywed woman, on the night of their marriage. Things like that. Sorry to be crude. But
you said that as tastefully as you could.
But it is because of things like that we implemented a way for us to be able to fight back against a government that ever tried to do that kind of thing to us.
And think about it like this. What did our founding fathers do? Why do you think they put this in? What did they do against the British Empire? Took up arms against a tyrannical government. They recognized that a government can get tyrannical, that a government can get out of control, a government cannot listen, so on and so forth, and it is a last resort is to take up arms against them. So, please, I don't want to hear that the Second Amendment is about going out duck hunting. We all know that that's crap. That is spin on how to justify your political beliefs. When JFK got shot, was there protests about anybody go after Lee Harvey Oswald where he got a shotgun from, or George Wallace got shot, or RFK, or Martin Luther King, or Malcolm X,
or Ronald Reagan
in
the 80s.
Well, the Brady Bill kind of came out of that a decade later,
a little bit,
where that was really the first major gun control, where we really got the term assault weapon. And I don't want to go into that because I think that's a term that anti-gun people have labeled certain guns that look bad without having any understanding of what your average handgun is a semi-automatic.
Absolutely,
you don't reload it. You don't eject a cartridge.
Right,
it's a semi-automatic weapon.
Yeah, as fast as you can pull the trigger, you'll fire a shot
6 times.
The magazine's empty. Well, it depends.
Or 8,
or more.
Yeah, it's possible.
12. Yeah.
So it's just but the level of ignorance of why we have something and why it should be preserved, is just. I don't know whether to shake my head at it or get angry or, want to rip somebody's eyes out. I don't know what I want to do about it. But you tell me, just before we get into Eden Prairie here, is it civics or economics that is the worst taught subject?
I don't know. I mean, we don't read Adam Smith anymore, and we
only read John Keynes.
Right, and. Yeah, technically, you have to read the Constitution when you're in a civics class. You might have to talk about it. No, I don't know. I took it in 10th. I really don't know what the standards are anymore on when you take that.
No idea.
But I guess this is the thing. I mean, when you have the Constitution, but you don't have the context under which it was written, it makes it a lot easier to not agree with why those things are in there.
But I mean, like the First Amendment too. I mean, freedom of establishing a religion.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say there can be no religion in the public. It doesn't say God can be outlawed. The federal government cannot declare a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Well, and but
we take that to mean, well, we don't, but it's been. I hate to use the word interpreted.
We cannot have a state church.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't. That's pretty much what it's saying.
But yet, even after our founding, for a long time, like the House of Representatives printed Bibles. They had studies there in the chambers. It wasn't a foreign concept.
The Bibles were in the schools until the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, for 80% of this country's... now you can't say Christmas at school. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. But I mean, let's get to Eden Prairie here.
All right. Now, taking a look, we've said for a long time on this show, when you're running for city council, it's about local issues, and you don't really have to worry about your position on, the war in Afghanistan, abortion, gun rights, because those things are not local issues, and you would never have to talk about them. It is funny that just within a few years, we have are finding ourselves more increasingly in a place where now we need to at least address the fact that they don't belong in the local sphere.
Well, I think what's happening is the people who want action on certain items are frustrated by the fact that they're not getting them at the federal and state level. So they're going where they think they can get victories.
Right.
So they're going to radical city councils like Minneapolis and almost as radical councils as Eden Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
They're close.
Yeah.
Take away minimum wage and tell me what's the difference between Eden Prairie and Minneapolis.
Yeah, there's not a whole heck of
Not
a lot.
much.
No.
Their council is full of nincompoops. I don't know how to describe it any other way.
Like, what we found out is that they were on the forefront of being a smoke-free community. They were on the forefront of rededicating themselves as a community to the Paris Accords, which we've talked about here on this show. And now, because of what has gone down, and we talked about a little bit in Deerfield, Illinois, and in Highland Park, Illinois, where they have banned assault weapons.
Ban them from what? Being sold or owned?
Good question. I need to look further into that. But really, it's just astonishing enough that they are trying to do either.
Well, they don't have enough to do. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You'd think Illinois, a pretty far left-wing state, would be taking this issue up at the state level. But they must not be fast enough for...
But, they're not that far left. Most of Illinois is farmland. You have Chicago, which eclipses a great deal of that state. And then you have some other cities, obviously, in Chicago that probably do... Or in Illinois, that probably lean to the left. Mm-hmm. I haven't studied it, so I don't know where, like, Rockford or Urbana or any of that stuff lays on the political spectrum, but Chicago is so big, and so much of Illinois is rural that, it does kind of dictate the way that state goes, kind of like New York City does with New York.
Yeah, there's definitely conservative parts of New York,
mm-hmm.
Up in northern New York and even out in the Rochester, Buffalo area. It's kind of 50-50 over there, but
right.
Even California has got its...
Absolutely.
It just can't escape L.A. and San Francisco and the other cities. It's just the urban places and then the suburbs, which are becoming more urban because of regional planning, have kind of changed that. But anyhow, Eden Prairie is going to mull over... Now, this is interesting. We are getting this from swnewsmedia.com. Mull over a resolution that could ask businesses selling firearms in the city to consider not selling assault weapons, whatever that is, and not sell to people under the age of 21. So what does this resolution actually do? What if this place said, no, we don't want to?
Right.
That's 10% of our sales. We're not doing it.
Yeah,
now, the next paragraph is people coming. It just talks about people coming to consider banning assault weapons in Eden Prairie. Well, that's not what the resolution is being talked about here.
Right.
Some guy named John Mallow says, while he is a hunter, again irrelevant, and the owner of 3 firearms, again irrelevant as well, no hunter needs an assault weapon. Mallow cites Deerfield and Highland Park as examples of communities that have banned them, and he is asking the council to consider adopting a similar one. He probably is part of his local DFL and got the talking points memo.
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't know about Highland Park, no offense.
Right.
But he didn't pick that out of nowhere.
Right. But just so that we're clear on what's being discussed here, I mean, we'll find out exactly what's in Eden Prairie's proposal, but even if it's not the same, I think the goal is going to be to take as much as they can. Mm-hmm. And it took me all of 10 seconds to find this, so I guess I probably should have done that before the show. But as far as Deerfield goes, what they're looking at is they have made it unlawful for a person to carry, keep, bear, transport, or possess an assault weapon in the village, except if the weapon is broken down in a non-functioning state, is not immediately accessible to any person, or is unloaded and enclosed in a case, firearm carrying box, shipping box, or other container by a person who has been issued a currently valid firearm owner's identification card. So basically, unless it is useless, you can't own it.
Interesting. So then a couple of people talk, blah, 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 doesn't matter. City Councilor Ron Case says he wanted... City Councilor? Does that mean he's the lawyer?
No. Well... yeah,
no, he is not the city attorney. The city attorney is some guy named Rick Rosnow.
Okay.
Or Rozo or whatever.
Okay, so it could have said city council member, city council person.
Said he wants the city to do a few things. He admits they have few legal options, but he'd like to consider a draft resolution where stores within the city would be asked to voluntarily consider not selling assault-style rifles to people under 21. And some counselors, one named Kathy Nelson, says she supports whatever the city can do with gun violence protection. Yeah, check out Chicago. It's really worked there.
Yes.
But she wants to make it clear they support hunters and anyone who wants to obtain a handgun. Again, you are clueless about the Second Amendment, Miss Nelson. Go back to first grade. You have no idea what you're talking about. And again, I know I sound like a condescending, arrogant piece of garbage, but let me tell you, Miss Nelson, if that's what you think, you have no business holding office. You are violating the oath you took.
Yes.
Mayor Nancy Tyra-Lukens says she was in favor of it, calling it a great start. Oh, yippity-doo-dah. Council member Brad Aho said he's a hunter, again irrelevant. Avid sportsman, again irrelevant. And he didn't know that he wants to go on the record saying we should limit people's rights to what style of weapon they can purchase. Oh, well, there's a great defense of the Second Amendment. You're not sure? Did you not take an oath to protect the Constitution, sir?
Yeah. I think he's Finnish. That's pronounced a-hole.
Oh, okay.
So, I think. Yeah.
But he seems wishy-washy. Attorney Rick Russell gave a presentation, said the legislature preempts, hey, your favorite word, all authority of home rule or statutory cities to regulate firearms. Well, then this is pretty much dead.
Yeah. Absolutely. But the whole goal is, and they state this above, is that hopefully if enough cities like us can push back, maybe the legislature will pay attention and do something.
Huh. Well, I'm sure that's the thinking, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. And they're worried about places that sell firearms near the mall.
Huh.
I don't understand, I
don't know. I guess if you're a mile away, it's with, if you don't have transit, if you don't have, something like that, how do you get all the way to the mall?
If they can afford a gun, they can probably afford an Uber to get to the gun store.
Yeah, and by the way, if you would make the mall a gun-free zone, maybe that's a problem too. That should be considered. By the way, the state does a lot of that. But you got security people walking around who are unarmed. Well, what are they going to do if somebody pulls a gun out? Wrestle them? Tell them they're naughty? Send them to the corner? I don't know. So
this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of this fight. And
expect St. Louis Park to take it up next.
Oh, I'm sure. Or Minneapolis.
I'm surprised they haven't.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised they're letting another city lead the way on this.
Lead the way downhill into the ocean. You'd think Minneapolis would be going first.
Yeah, you'd think so. I don't know. They're too busy building bike lanes, I guess. So
inspecting houses.
Yeah, it's going real well for them. All right. So you've heard us talking about, hey, this could actually happen. cities could start talking about this. Well, guess what? They are. So it is time for us to pay attention. It's time for us to consider getting onto these advisory commissions and getting onto city council so that we can stop things like this from ever happening. It's a lot easier if we do it now than if we wait until we have to try and rescind something bad that they've already done.
Laws are a million times easier to make than they are to repeal.
Absolutely. So with that, we're gonna transition, but that's enough to get under your feathers just for the moment and get you riled up. But it's a good transition because coming up next, we've got an interview with candidate for Minnesota governor, Phillip Parrish, who, with his background, loves to talk about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and so it should be a pretty lively discussion. I'm really excited for it.
Can't wait.
All right, we will be back with that interview in one moment. Don't go anywhere. Hey, I want to thank you for listening to today's podcast. I'm not sure how you found us, but I want to let you know that we have made it as easy as possible for you to find, follow, and share this podcast with as many people as possible. All you have to do is type in Community Solutions, and we're in the Apple iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, we're on Spotify, and as usual, you can find it out on YouTube or by going directly to podbabble.com, the great podcast network that we're part of. So go out there and go nuts, because the more that you share this information, the greater opportunity that you have to change your community. So thank you again for listening. Now let's get back to the show. And welcome back. As promised here on the Community Solutions Minnesota podcast, we have another candidate for Minnesota governor, Phillip Parrish, who's with us. Welcome, Phillip. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Good. Fantastic. Well, I just want to give you an opportunity up front to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, why you got into the race, all that kind of stuff.
You bet. So I originally, after graduation, I went to college to become a teacher. So I taught music, believe it or not, K-12 music, choir and band and classroom music for 13 years. And then I got a principal's license, and I specialize in emotional behavioral disorders, and I got a wonderful job straight after getting my principal's license at Girard Treatment Programs in Austin, Minnesota, New Dominion School. And I would still be there today. I loved the job, but in the midst of all that, I had joined the Navy Reserves, and I was enlisted for 9.5 years as an intelligence specialist. And then I was offered a direct commission as an intelligence officer, and I specialized in counterterrorism and foreign policy. So with those two careers, believe it or not, they gelled very, very well. But in the last 10 years, I've been away on active duty more than I've been home. And so that's kind of a background of the career type of things. And in that time as being an intelligence officer, especially, I've had some experiences with working with interagency law enforcement partners that have consistently led to a knowledge base that has concerned me a lot about Minnesota. Those kinds of things are dealing with fraud, money laundering, human trafficking, the funding of extremist groups inside the U.S. and overseas, and the at-will travel of extremist persons coming in and out of Minnesota without much pushback at all. And those kinds of things led to some concerns and some motivation to get involved. In fact, I'm not a politician. I have never been a politician. I don't intend to be a politician. I'm running for a Republican endorsement, but I'm a statesman. I'm a leader. And I feel a great deal of responsibility to all of my fellow citizens in Minnesota and America to do the things that I've been trained to do, and in a sense do the things that I've been trained to do in the military, but yet use those skills in a way that's a little bit different, but in the office of governor which I believe serves the people very well. So in that experience, I have a great deal of motivation to help protect and defend the Constitution and our citizens from what I believe to be an extremely ill-intended agenda that has been going on for a very long time. And I've been traveling Minnesota at length for over a year now, and have had some wonderful conversations with thousands of people that are really feeling and hearing and thinking the same thing. And I think the time has come for us to have some very difficult conversations. And those conversations are going very, very well lately.
Oh, that's good to
maybe
hear.
That's a good starting point. Yeah.
Good. Just from Jason used to be a music teacher, so I had to throw that out there.
I thought you're a great fit for this podcast. I used to be a music teacher, and Andrew has emotional and behavioral disorders, so it's it works out well.
Well, let me thank you, Philip, for your service. By the way,
absolutely,
from everybody.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
It's an honor. It really is.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who served who told me, "Hey, it's just a job." But to me, I don't see it that way. As the son of a man with two Purple Hearts, I don't take anybody's service for granted. Hey, I want to just first touch on the state of the race for governor. Last couple of weeks, a lot of things have happened. The former governor is officially, after months of getting his toes wet or whatever, has gotten in the race, and just yesterday, former Chairman Downey officially ended his campaign. So what's your take on the state of the race right now for Minnesota governor on the Republican side?
We are very, very optimistic and very confident. I know we have a lot of naysayers. I know we have a lot of political elite that don't want to really hear what I have to say. But Tim Pawlenty actually has helped us a great deal. I know that's an uncomfortable reality for many of them, but he's actually helped us a great deal because people across Minnesota are that upset with the traditional politician, the globalist, the one world order advocate type of people, and this is what Tim Pawlenty is. And so it has made them so angry that he has entered the race. I'm honestly telling you, I'd love to be able to just put them in a zip file and send them to you. I've had hundreds of phone calls and emails since Tim announced officially saying, I'm off the fence, Phil, and I'm with you, and 100%, what can I do to help? And so since Tim has entered the race officially, that motivation for people to get involved has really become a reality. I have a great deal of respect for Keith Downey, and I was surprised to hear him end his bid for governor. But at the same time, part of the reason why I have some respect for Keith is because he's a very experienced and well-grounded tactician when it comes to politics. But that's evidence as to why he saw the writing on the wall that America, Minnesotans, are not willing to tolerate the political class anymore. And Keith is a very smart person, and he has a lot of wonderful ideas, and he has some good policy notions. But he sees the writing on the wall. Minnesotans are just absolutely sick to death of politicians.
I would agree with that, and I don't know how aware you are of where we came from as a group, but in our origins, we live here in Crystal, or Andrew did. He lives in Plymouth now, but I still live in Crystal, Minnesota. And we, because of some issues going on in the city, were able to replace all 7 of the sitting city council members who were all, pretty much endorsed by the Democrat Party, and have 7 nonpartisans in there that I would say are very libertarian, conservative types, and they have some of them have won re-election against people that were out and out, endorsed by the Democratic Party, just because they're not your typical politicians. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree.
Right over here in Keith Ellison's district.
That's true.
I'm in CD3 now, so I escaped.
Well, that's true.
Good. Yep.
So, yeah, I hear where you're coming from, and I agree. I think, even at the presidential level, that election had a lot more to do with people being tired of what they were getting, voting for someone and not seeing any tangible change other than for government to become bigger over time. So I think that's the right frame of thought, coming into politics as maybe a disruptor rather than someone who's coming just to get along or to advance their career is a big deal.
Yeah, I had somebody walk up to me the other day, and I actually, as they approached me, I was interpreting from their body language that they were very angry with me. And it was the governor's forum up in Thief River Falls. And he started pointing his finger at me, and he started saying repeatedly, "Can't be bought. Can't be bought." And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what is this gentleman driving at here? And again, I was thinking he was kind of angry at me, but then it started to dawn on me what he was up to. He was very excited and impressed with my responses at the forum in Thief River Falls, and that his idea was from what I was talking about is that I can't be bought. To me, that was very refreshing and motivating, because as much as people want to be cynical, I understand people being cynical, because we've all been duped by these agendas with politicians. But I am honestly a father, a teacher, a husband, a principal, a U.S. Navy intelligence officer, run-of-the-mill, everyday person trying to get up every day to genuinely just fight for our liberties, our Constitution, our freedoms. And as hard as that is for the elite and the cynical to believe, that's the truth. And it is what it is. I can't be bought. I can't be swayed from this agenda. I have nothing to gain. I have nothing to lose. And that makes me dangerous. And that's why some of the political elite, like Tim Plenty, are so, they're a bit on their heels. They're a bit defensive, because they know there's nothing they can do to me to sway me from this agenda.
Oh, that's like a breath of fresh air, because there are so many, especially, and I'm not bad-mouthing anyone in particular, but it's just that it seems like whether we have a Democrat majority or a Republican majority, we tend to get the same things, and it has always kind of been a mystery to me. And I understand that a lot of it is the money that flows in from special interests, and that's why we continue to see things like rail and transit-oriented development and things like that moving forward in Minnesota versus a scaling back of government, and why regional governments all over the state have been empowered to do what they do and set the agenda for municipalities and counties versus more local control. And I don't know where you stand on that. Maybe you could fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of a big philosophical point of view there, which I completely agree with. What has happened, in my view, if I can just expand on that, is some of our legislators, our leaders, our elected officials, some of them are very genuine in their original intent, in their original motivation. When they get into the system, this big bureaucratic monster, they sometimes feel overwhelmed. They sometimes feel, they start getting cynical. Well, I can't really make the big change. I'll just have to do what I can today. And by the way, the reason why I can talk like this, like I have experience in it, is, remember, just a reminder to the audience, intelligence officer specializing in foreign policy, I was one of those people that leaders were coming to me asking me why, who, what, when, where, why of a particular country and their leadership, and what they were up to and how they were up to it, and what they were doing to manipulate the public or manipulate other regions or manipulate other governments. when you get so good at analyzing that and experienced at it and making mistakes as well, but then learning from your mistakes, you also get good at analyzing your own government and your own leadership. Does that make sense? Kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what I see happening is partly there's a lot of legislators out there that just fall prey to the natural human condition, fears, anxiety, trying to fit in. But then you have a group of people who are knowingly exploiting the situations. I believe, I hope to believe that group that are exploiting the situation is a smaller percentage than what I believe to be the larger percentage that I think just got caught up in the human condition. But then there is an actual percentage of the group that not only knowingly participate in these agendas of growing government and just doing whatever it takes to make a good name for themselves or to get elected again. There is, and I understand that some of us are called conspiracy theorists or, just, insane or wackos, but there truly is a group of people, a small percentage, that intend harm and do actually want to change the core of our essence of our Constitution and who we are as Americans and who we are as Minnesotans. That small percentage of people, they're very, very strong in their intent, in their abilities, in their knowledge of how to exploit people in the system. That group of people is real, and those of us that are called nutcases or conspiracy theorists, stand strong. You're not crazy. This is real. It is true. And these people who are trying to exploit every possible way to pad their pockets with their intentional flow of benefit, of whether it's commerce or building projects or land development, these people are real. It's not your imagination. So stand strong. That's how these legislators get hooked up in all this. And, when they get themselves hooked up in campaign contributions or agendas with interest groups, that's how it starts. And pretty soon they wake up and they realize, oh my gosh, what have I done? And then they have a choice. Do I speak up and commit political suicide, or do I happily just fade away in the distance and everybody forgot about me?
I have to jump in, Philip. You have any idea how many times Jason and I have been called conspiracy theorists from stuff we get from government websites? I mean, you wouldn't believe it. And, we have seen things come from non-governmental organizations that are backed by corporate dollars that are pushing this or that, whether that's climate change stuff, whether that's we talked about the Global Covenant of Mayors a few months ago that are trying to get around U.S. law and implement things, quote, voluntarily. I'm using air quotes on the radio, but we all know what that means. I mean, how do we beat that back here in Minnesota? I mean, I'll make you I'll declare you the winner of the race right now. I mean, what?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Good.
I mean,
awesome.
How do you start? Because sometimes, I mean, I agree that anybody who thinks outside the norm gets the label of a nut job and a wacko. And believe me, I have been called that. Even though I will quote people in office, I will quote government documents, I'll quote city comprehensive plans, and they literally look at me like I'm speaking Swahili. I mean, what's the first? You're the governor now. I mean, how do you start to walk that back and get to a more constitutional rule of law, the way our founders envisioned?
Great. Yeah, the first thing we do is we do what I've been doing for over a year now. All of us, like yourselves, all of us start using direct examples to debunk their narrative. So, for example, and this may seem unrelated at first, but hang with me. The notion that other countries use their narrative. The other countries are in our country, exploiting us, using us, manipulating us, and got Hillary Clinton unelected and Donald Trump elected. So just use that pattern of behavior or thought, right?
Right.
So we know for a fact, and so put the ridiculous conversation on the shelf for a while. Law enforcement partners and intelligence officers and anyone with any kind of decent history, including yourselves, understand that if we have the capabilities of infiltrating other countries to influence elections or influence the direction of democracy or alleged democracy or influence the destabilization of a country, if we have the power and the influence and the capabilities of doing that, what makes anyone believe that other countries don't have the same power and influence and abilities? I mean, it's so narcissistic and arrogant to think that other countries can't do those kinds of things, that's where the starting point. In other words, start at debunking their intellectual dishonesty. And I used an international example, but the same principle is at stake. Whether you have a company in Minnesota that's hooked up with legislators in the legislation who are trying to pick winners and losers and position themselves into long-term contracts or long-term benefit for their stakeholders or long-term benefits for their particular agenda item, these things are real. That's a level of corruption and conspiracy on their part that's where the real story is. You know, all this fake news garbage that's been happening since Hillary Clinton was exposed. And again, that's a national stage, but the same principle is at stake here with Mark Dayton, with Tim Pawlenty, with Tim Waltz. The same principle of Keith Ellison. These things are at stake right here in Minnesota. The notion that they can sell their garbage and get away with their false narratives and the people allegedly not understand what they're up to, that's what's actually going to be their downfall. Because I'm telling you from traveling across Minnesota and speaking with thousands and thousands of people are getting it. They're understanding how bad they've been lied to and exploited.
Well, you know, and you mentioned something about, you know, companies getting favored. We've seen this on the local level, too. You know, certain companies will get tax abatements. They're on some NGO serving with, you know, we talked about the Gateway Corridor. We did a whole episode on that. I mean, there is a lot of favoritism out there. There's a lot of rubbing elbows, if you will. I mean, but yet I think that's resonating, but I feel it's not resonating enough. You know, that's just my kind of attitude, that people think crony capitalism isn't a day-to-day thing. But it really is when you think about it. You know, companies getting special tax breaks while the rest of us, you know, are paying what the left would call our fair share, you know, even though they never define that. I mean, but that happens all over here in Minnesota and all over everywhere.
Yeah. I think what we're fighting, Andrew, is we're fighting. That was Andrew, right?
Yes, that's me.
Yeah, I think what we're fighting, Andrew, is we're fighting a quantity of information. So the information warfare, and I call it that on purpose because that's what it is. The information warfare that we're receiving from the paid-off press. There is no journalism left in Minnesota, by the way. They're absolutely gone. I don't think there's any remnants of journalism, true journalism left. I'll take that back. I met a couple of journalists in Minnesota recently that, God bless them, I think they are actually trying to be decent. You two are, in a sense, journalists, that you are unconventional journalists that need to keep fighting.
True.
Yeah, I consider us commentators, but, you know, they're
But
kind of all in the
you're
journalism bucket now.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a way, you're journalists in the sense that you're starting to document the history of what's being done to us. It might be unconventional to what we were taught in college or in high school, but you are documenting it, and you are documenting the truth. Even if people don't want to necessarily grab onto it now, it's going to be an archive that eventually comes to the surface. The truth always comes to the surface. So what we're fighting against is a level of information that, you're right, it seems like we're not getting enough of the message out there, and that too many of the other outlets of media and news and information is not really getting the truth to people. But the unique part of what I'm seeing as I'm out speaking with groups anywhere from 5, 10, 20 people to a couple hundred, the majority of the people in the audience, I'm telling you, they're not getting their news from the mainstream media anymore. There is something,
I think that's true,
genuinely happening.
Yeah, so much has changed in the past 25 years. I mean, when I was growing up, this would be in the 80s, I'll date myself a little. It was Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, and Peter Jennings, and nobody else did the news. Today, technology has kind of knocked down some of those barriers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And you two can probably relate to this. In a sense, despite the fact that Zuckerberg and his cronies have tried to elect Hillary Clinton, their medium or their platform has actually allowed those of us that are seeking the truth, speaking the truth, advancing the truth, no matter what they do to us, we find a way through it, over it, under it, and eventually get the truth out anyway.
Well, yeah, and you look on something like Twitter, President Trump, 51 million followers. I mean, he can talk to 51 million people anytime he wants to.
Yeah, and it's immediate.
Right.
He puts out it's immediate, and then in that, whether it's received well or not, that immediately leads to conversations throughout the world.
Yeah.
In seconds. And that's something that the progressives and the elites and the globalists, is something they can't control. So they're scared to death because they realize, in a sense, the monster they wanted to create to help them is actually going to be the thing that defeats them.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, unless they can figure out a way to control and not allow speech to be free. Because as we all know, looking at the way that they're trying, but the way that they have done things over decades has been to be able to control things, and that's through special interests and throwing money around, throwing their weight around. I mean, we've seen it here, in this state when we look at things like Tobacco 21, when we look at things like ranked choice voting, when we look at all of these special interests come and they try to influence things at the state level, and then when they're unsuccessful they go to the local level to try to get it in, and they're doing an end run around. I mean, take a look at preemption has been something that we've talked about, and I've seen a number of articles about in recent times where they want to get rid of the ability of the state to be able to pass laws that affect the local level. But they say it's all about protecting people of low income and things like that. I mean, it so that they can name their own minimum wage. It's so that they can enact gun control.
Yeah, things that are not in their city charters or anything like that. I mean, the state has constitutional obligations. I mean, and we've been fighting Tobacco 21, ranked choice voting at the local level, but there's starting to become action everywhere about that. I mean, it's kind of just a never-ending battle.
Yeah, it is a battle. And that's a perfect segue into the role of the governor, the role of the state government. That role is to protect people from this kind of lunacy, this kind of socialist Marxist lunacy. It's our role as a governor and the administration, and I pray to it be a parish administration where we are back to protecting you, the citizen, and allowing you to live your life with your free will and your free choices and your God-given liberties, without having to, every single thing we do, we turn around and there's some kind of law or mandate or regulation, or you can't walk out your door recently to just, it's been, I know it's not new. I mean, it's been happening to us for a long time. But you're right, you're on track.
Pretty soon there'll be a tax on free air. to breathe here in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Let me kind of take what Jason asked you and segue. One of the things that we've seen is even the gun control issue is creeping into local government. There was a city in Illinois that banned assault rifles. Deerfield, Illinois. I mean, and I want to kind of ask a two-part question. I mean, the idea cities can just basically null and void a constitutional right just by the snap of your fingers if they don't like what the legislature's doing. Then I want to get your take on one of my issues I've had with a lot of Republicans. Now I've been a Republican my whole adult life. I'm the son of a feminist and a Teamster, but I mean I've been in the party for 16 years now, and one of my problems has been Republicans will burn at the stake for the Second Amendment, but they don't have that passion about all the other amendments. And it's been an ongoing frustration for me. So what's your take on what's going on right now with the Second Amendment? And then just kind of segue into protecting all amendments.
Right. So, yeah, taking the Second Amendment first in the most current events, you're absolutely right, Andrew. We have to actually understand that it is the proper role of a governor and elected officials to protect its citizens and defend the Constitution as it is written. It's not a living, modifiable, breathable, it's whatever I choose today document. It's the Constitution. And we need to have leaders that are willing to stand up and say, no, whether it's a municipality or whether it's some gated community, you can't make these rogue laws to take away the rights and liberties of citizens that you do not have the authority to do. So, and part of that is the actual governor and or legislator exercising their proper authorities and responsibilities to protect its citizens and to protect their freedoms and rights. Sorry, I'm probably going to rabbit hole all day long just on that one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So then part two, refresh me part two.
Where
were you headed with part two?
Well, I was headed toward, Republicans will defend the Second Amendment all day, but
right.
They don't seem to have that passion, the same fire in their belly. Because I have a fire in my belly about every constitutional amendment.
I'm wishy-washy on the third.
Yeah. You want to get...
I want to quarter soldiers sometimes.
I was about to say, do you want them to sit in your living room? Okay, so... But, I just don't see the same level of... you take an oath to defend the Constitution. It's not, I'll defend the parts I like and I won't defend the parts I don't like. So why isn't there that? And, I mean... Where do you stand on the Constitution just as a whole?
Yeah, here again is that kind of like I don't want to go too far back into what I mentioned before, but it's the human condition of this. I don't know. You get elected to office and you've done all these, trying to get along with people and trying to get votes, and then you get into office and you want to stay in office. I don't know. Part of it's the human condition. I think people, even that have genuine interests and have genuinely fought for the right thing, they lose their way because they put themselves in vulnerable situations where they stand to lose their authority, they stand to lose their financial stability, or they stand to lose their friendships. There's something I could touch on briefly as to why I believe there are certain leaders that come along. So let me qualify this. Before I say this, let me qualify this. The governor's office or an elected official's office is no place for a theocracy. Our Constitution protects us from the going backwards in history to these barbaric theocracies that take away people's rights rather than support them. So keep that in mind before anybody tries to, when they hear this podcast, try to exploit me for something that I'm not saying. There's leaders that come along that you can't sway them because they're grounded in a belief system that allows them to rise above all the garbage, all the hate, all the rhetoric, all the the nastiness that comes with this. And those leaders that come along with that grounding and that courage and that wisdom and that belief system, those leaders that come along like that, it takes that tremendous amount of courage and belief system to actually fight off all those negative, nasty people. And those types of leaders, I've found in my own life to be far and few between, and that's sad, because all of us, I think, would like for our families, and especially our children and grandchildren, they would like that person to come along and say, there is nothing you can do to me that's going to sway me from the truth, the Constitution, my belief system. I think you know where I'm going, possibly without.
Yeah, no, I get that totally. And unfortunately, I think government ends up having the scales tip in the wrong direction on that one far too often. And because of that, I mean, if we look at, like, say, a state level versus local level battle that continues to keep happening, and maybe I can just get you to weigh in a little bit on how you feel about it, but you look at, like, a locality and you have, like, the Met Council that is telling you, no, you're going to have this bus rapid transit run through your community, or you're going to have this light rail run through your community, or no, you're going to have this ratio of high density housing, and you want to empower the locality over the power that's been granted by the state there. But then on the other hand, what would you do if a locality, say, and this isn't out of the realm of possibility, Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, St. Paul, Duluth, decided we are going to enact gun control legislation, and it doesn't matter what the state says about it. I mean, those are two, like, opposite scenarios. Where do you fall on that?
We're going to make sure we have a good attorney general like Doug Wardlow, and get rid of Lori Swanson. Well, she's not running again, but we're going to make sure that we get a good attorney general who's going to follow the law. And we're going to actually go after people that aren't following the Constitution, people or groups or organizations that aren't following the Constitution. So we're going to exercise our responsibilities according to the law. And we're going to start taking back ownership of our authorities and responsibilities as an executive branch and a legislative branch, because I believe you're alluding to, whether you said it or not, is you're talking about a fact that our legislators, our elected officials, have abdicated their authorities and responsibilities to these agencies and organizations like the Met Council that is completely unconstitutional and way beyond their scope. The Met Council has committed unconstitutional acts and I believe illegal, corrupt acts to the extent that if you were to analyze their relationships with zoning, just take one aspect of what they've been involved with. When you start as an unelected group of officials, you start a taxation of people that you're not authorized to do, and you create associations with big money people that aren't from this state, by the way, most of them, in zoning and land grabbing to create corridors of housing and transportation. I think, we're probably singing to the choir with each other. Yeah. These things are not lawful. It's not appropriate, and they need to be exposed and taken on, and we've got to stop apologizing for it, because too many people, so worse than the perpetrator in my view right now, and Met Council is a great example of just one of many egregious things that are done to Minnesotans. Worse than the perpetrators, Met Council, our perpetrators, are the people who are knowingly understanding what is happening, and they stand there and do nothing, especially those in a position of authority like our current elected officials. They have the authority to end this unconstitutional and unlawful, and in many cases, criminal behavior of associations of persons that are exploiting U.S. citizens, Minnesota citizens, and the tax dollars to pad their pockets. This is against stuff that you and I would go to, Jason and Andrew, and the three of us would go to prison for if we formed a little co-op with each other,
right,
and decided we're going to use our position of authority to to influence a particular purchase and or to influence a long-term agenda of profit for myself or my particular group of people, that's criminal behavior when you're talking about public money. This is real. This isn't imagined. You two are in your podcast, and what you've been exposing is real. And
absolutely.
We have to have enough courage to keep this conversation going across Minnesota and stop allowing the corrupt press and these corrupt conversations with the people who are influencing our friends and family. We've got to keep up the message because we're right and it's the truth.
So let me get.
I could go.
Yeah. Well, we could go on for days.
We do.
think, on this. Yeah, we do all the time. I mean, I can tell you just as a quick example from I used to be on the Planning Commission in Crystal, and the Met Council had put housing projections on us, and we were a fully developed city. I mean, they wanted us to add 2,600 households or something by 2040, and I mean, we had to fight. We had almost threatened them to go to court to get. And I'm like, who is this group that's telling us we have to do this? And I reached out to the Republican politicians that I knew. They all hate the Met Council. They all tell me they're going to blah, blah, blah. And that was in 2013. I sit here 5 years later. One party's got the majority in the House and Senate, and they fully fund the Met Council. They've taken away no laws. They've added it no omnibus bills with the governor. So you're right. There is that lack of will there to follow through.
The wonderful thing about the Met Council, by the way, is they're an appointed group. And guess what I can do as governor?
Yeah.
Hey, I got to throw my name out there because I am totally willing to be appointed, and nobody will do nothing better than I will.
That's true.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do with the Met Council is not do. I'm not going to appoint a single person. They're all just going to pack their bags and go away. And, those who are theorizing or hypothesis that, you can't do that, that's going to have a catastrophic knock-on effect. No. You're going to have those who are planning, which their original scope was, sewers and gutters and infrastructure like that. You're going to put the responsibilities back on the people that they belong to in the first place. And any kind of regional planning, well, guess what, legislators? That's what you were elected for. Stop abdicating your authorities and responsibilities to agencies and programs to make yourselves look good so you can avoid being the bad guy and answering for it at an election. These are the kinds of things that I'm trying to offer with a level of integrity and honesty that seems quite sensible to most of us, and that I would suggest the majority of Minnesotans, but somehow eludes people at the election booth.
Yeah, Phillip, the time flies here. That was quick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, I want to give you a chance to tell everybody on the web where they can find you, social media, Twitter. Where do people go to get in touch with you and see other things that
volunteer, donate?
Yeah, anything like that.
Absolutely. So the best place to start is the parrishformn.com. So it's PARRISH, the number 4, MN.com. Parrishformn.com is the official website. And then if you go to the very bottom of the page on each tab, it doesn't matter what tab you're on the very bottom of the page, you can connect with the social media. The social media has gone nuts. I am so humbled and so inspired. I mean, you're talking about Southern Minnesota boy, grew up to be a teacher and a principal and then an intelligence officer for now 20 years this July. To have 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 followers, depending on which platform you look at, and you have videos that have been viewed almost 10,000 times, it's just inspiring. I get some days I look at things and I get taken back by it because I don't understand how it happened, other than the fact that I'm telling you, people are that motivated. So go to the website, go to the social media, keep spreading the word. If you are able to help out, I am a $5, $20, $50 type of donation person. The person that walked up to me and said, Mr. Parrish, you can't be bought. That's the truth. I do not have big corporate dollars. I have those people who are out there fighting, spreading the word, $5 at a time, $50 at a time, and take advantage of if you're a Minnesota resident, take advantage of the political contribution refund program. If you don't know what that is, you can get to it on the website. And that's the way to do it. It's just this a true, genuine grassroots. Keep spreading the word and get involved. And if you are hearing this message and you're a delegate or alternate, please go to the congressional district conventions and speak for me to others. And please go to the state convention. I know it's time. I know it's money. But please stay involved. Stop being cynical. It really is that important. And we are in that bad a shape here in Minnesota that we've got to stand up and start doing something.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's time for more people to be involved in the process for sure. Wow, this has been fun. We'd love to have you back sometime, and you know, whether it's talking about the continuance of the governor's race, or talking about you know, as governor, what you're going to start doing, or maybe it's even just to start talking about some of those Navy surveillance kind of things. As far as I know there's much you can't tell me without killing me, but I know that there are certain things I'm sure you have an opinion on, like arming of local police with you know, like Bradley armored fighting vehicles and things like that. That it'd be fun to have a discussion about, maybe. So
yeah, you bet. No, I'm really impressed. By the way, I'm really impressed with what I've read, and people say really great things about you guys. So.
Thank you.
I've actually really enjoyed this interview, so thank you very much.
Good.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in Duluth.
Yeah, best of luck to you. So
awesome. All right, see you in Duluth.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Wow, that was a really good interview.
We get better and better at this.
Yeah, well, you know, the quality of the guests helps, you know, and all three governor candidates that we've had on, I think, have done a really good job, and hopefully we're providing you all with enough information and ammunition.
Well, yeah, and I've been encouraged with a lot of the things from Commissioner Johnson and Mayor Stevens and Mr. Parrish had to say about the relationship of state and local government. I think one of them gets in. I think you're going to see some changes. Of course, the legislature has to go along with a lot of them. I mean, I know the Senate isn't up, but you know, an interesting discussion, I think, about role of government levels with a different governor are going to be at the forefront, I think, for all of the candidates that we've talked to.
I hope that they make that a priority, because that is going to release, I believe, across the state, enough freedom to allow businesses to flourish, to allow people to become entrepreneurs and start businesses more easily, whether that's a main business or a secondary business to what they do normally.
Well, and it also just, you know, gets government back to what they're supposed to be doing. And you know, we have just a problem at every level of, you know, we've talked about roads where there's 8 layers of government mixed in and building one road, and who's in charge of it, and who's, you know, bonding. Why are we lobbying for bonding? We spent millions of dollars lobbying. We took that money and just went out and did something with it.
Yeah.
It'd be a different, you know, there's just, you know, the legislature holds a lot of power, and the deregulation, but again, with respect to the Constitution, we talked about at the beginning of the show, you know, our rights are one thing.
Yeah.
The little things that local government, and what they're getting them back to following their charters and things like that. I mean, that's where we have to, that's the way we have to go.
Absolutely. I agree. You've got my vote, Andrew Richter.
I ain't running yet.
Well, hopefully you won't be for a long time. We've got a lot of work to do here with this.
I know. It'll be someday. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm sure someday we'll keep getting pushed back.
Yeah, it'll be the Richter-Bradley ticket, or vice versa.
Right, we'll never be done doing what we're doing.
Yeah, we can go Richter-Bradley for governor, then Bradley Richter for president. How about that?
I love it. I'll be the governor and the vice president. If the mayor of St. Louis Park can be the deputy secretary of state and the mayor, well, why can't you and I be the lieutenant governor and president?
Now, you're teasing a little bit of what we're planning on talking about next week, but we got a little bit more research to do there, but we've got a lot of research done, and oh boy, are you in for a treat. Yeah. So if you like today...
We're going to apologize beforehand.
Just wait till next week, I'm telling you what. All right, so... After hearing all of that today, how can you not get involved? If you're hearing about things in your community, people want to ban guns, or people want to have organized garbage hauling, or whatever, let us know about it. If you want to run for something, if you want to get appointed to a commission, let us know about it so we can help you. And we want to keep tabs, and we want to make a concerted effort to get to our 20K strong farm team, because it is so important all across the state. We can do it. It is not that hard because there's such a minority of people that are involved. If you want to get a hold of us, you can do that at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That's commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. We're all over social media, and you can Google COMM Solutions MN, or you type that in social media. You'll find us. Share this podcast, please. We beg you, not because we aspire to be something, the rock stars of Minnesota when it comes to local politics, as much as we want to see it all change. We want to see a restoration of sanity, and so to do that, people have to get engaged and people have to get informed. And so that's why we put this podcast out there. It's our love letter to you as Minnesota residents. So with all of that, it's going to be one full week until we meet again. And we love you, Minnesota. But now it's your turn to get to work.
If I get too caught up